It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. This week, starring special guest star Mr. Steve Barden. All right, going to do a quick check to make sure that I am, in fact, broadcasting. And there we are. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, Michael. Good to see you. It's been a while.
It has. Okay, so for those of you who are watching, and please pass this along in the chat room to other guests as they show up. For some reason, we're having technical difficulties again for the last half hour. We've got great picture. We had no audio, and Steve couldn't see me or hear me. So we're ad-libbing with my telephone propped up next to my microphone. Hey, I'm nothing if not a problem solver. Anyway, I am very, very, very excited this week to do something that we've not done before that I can think of, which is Steve started a music library a year and a half ago called Real Note. And prior to that, he was a Taxi member for many, many years. And I thought it'd be really cool, now that he's been doing what he's doing with the library for a year and a half, to get his take of both sides, the yin and the yang of, what were the dopey mistakes he might have made before he really understood the library owner side of things. And now that he is a library owner, what mistakes does he see that he might be incredibly well suited to help you guys avoid? So that's what we're doing. Hello, everybody. I see Marion Laird. By the way, I want to, last week during the show, I could see what was going on in the chat, that Miriam's mom passed away, which is heartbreaking to all of us because we all felt like we knew her mom because she talks about her regularly in the chat. So she was kind of, and I mean this in the most affectionate way, a bit of a mascot to the folks in the chat room and the TAXITV regulars. So Marion, I know everybody else had a chance to send their well wishes last week, and you and I spoke on the phone earlier today. And I heard from little birdie that there is a GoFundMe happening. So I would like to ask Liz to put the GoFundMe in the chat. And if you guys are so inclined, it would be nice if you could... oh, there it is. Okay. Anyway, yes, I will be making a donation probably after I have dinner tonight, because nothing's more important than food. I will, after I finish TAXITV, get out of here, go home, have my dinner. I will sit down with my laptop, make a donation. I hope you guys can join me in doing that. So anyway, hugs to you, Marion. Anyway, back to Steve-O. Something that's always irked me, Steve, is when musicians, composers, artists in general say, ooh, music libraries, they take 50%. Why do they get half the money? And now you know, don't you?
It is a lot of stinking work, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think that people think, oh, you just bring in some friends that are composers or artists and send them a little one sheet to sign, and then you send the stuff right over to a music supervisor, and it magically shows up in a TV show.
If only it was that easy.
Yeah. Can you guys hear Steve okay? Are you getting enough level on Steve? By the way, let me know in the chat room, please.
We need to explain our audio situation here.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I told them that I've got you coming through the phone on speakerphone because...
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Weren't you paying attention in class?
No. I was waiting for my cue.
Oh, man. Steve's a bit low. Okay, let me turn it up a little.
Do I need to sit on a booster chair? What are you saying?
No. You don't need to sit on a booster. But behave yourself while we're in the restaurant, young man, or you're going straight home and no lollipop for you.
Funny.
All right. Hopefully that's good, because that's all the volume I got on my phone. Do I have it on speaker? Let me see. I think I do. That's so weird. Anyway, okay. So all that said, we are going to give away a free book during the broadcast today. We're giving away, yes, a free coloring book. Hey, Glenn Ruger, how are you? Good to see you back. Coloring book in the restaurant. I get it, with the lollipop. Yeah, give the kid a placemat and a crayon, and they're good to go for about 15 minutes. So, Steve, let me first hold up your book, because I don't plug this. I don't make a penny on this. Actually, I might be.
I don't make much more than that either.
I know. I actually think we may have an affiliate link, so I may be lying. I might make not a couple of bucks, couple of cents probably on it from Amazon. But I don't recommend it for that reason. I recommend it because I've read the book twice through. It is so unbelievably good and comprehensive. And several of the things we're going to talk about today are in this book. I mean, it covers such a wide range of topics. It tells you how to make the music. It tells you tagging and moods and just... there's so much in here. Contract examples, everything. Literally anything you need to know about writing music or doing music for TV is somehow referenced in this book in a very good way. So let's start with some misconceptions about music, like misconceptions you personally had when you were starting out in the business as a composer. Did you know right off the bat that you wanted to be a composer? Or did you want to be a rock star?
No, I actually wanted to be a studio guitar player. I went to GIT and I hung out with Tommy Tedesco, and it was right at the time when the studio system was kind of breaking down and everything was moving into home studios, and the whole system kind of fell apart. Because I was a guitar player, I said, if I'm not on the cover of Guitar Player magazine by the time I'm 30, I'm throwing in the towel.
I don't see the towel, but I think you're a little past 30.
That decade came and went, and then I turned to film scoring. I actually majored in music in college, and I was a guitar major. I went to Cal State Long Beach, and to be a guitar major, you had to play classical guitar music, and I didn't play classical. And it's one of those vocations that you have to start when you're 5 years old, I think, to be really good. Had I known that I really should have gone down the path of composition, I would have done much better. Because I went to UCLA and went into their film scoring program. Ended up doing some cartoon shows, and just had a lot of fun with it. And it wasn't until some years later that I kind of fell into production music. A friend of mine was doing an animated commercial. He's a graphic artist, and he was doing an animated commercial for Time Warner Cable, and he asked me to do the music for it. And we put together a little jazz combo, and it was fun. And I was just learning about PROs, and I joined ASCAP, and I filled out cue sheets, and I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. But, learning along the way, because I knew there was some money in there somewhere. And I got a call from ASCAP a couple of years later saying, hey, we've got some money with your name on it, but we need some more information. And so I filled out the information. I remember telling my wife, well, this could be worth $500. I should really, take some time and do this. And I got a check in the mail a few weeks later, and it was for $24,000.
Whoa!
And that's what I thought. There's a business in this, and I should pursue this a little bit more. But I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do with it. The other side of that story is that because I was learning about PROs, I went back to ASCAP and said, look, I'm the publisher too. I own the publishing. And I needed to fill out some documents, from the production company saying that they weren't claiming any rights to it. And they sent me another check for another $24,000. So I thought, man, this is a good thing to get into. But yeah, again, I just didn't know where to go with this. And it wasn't until maybe 8 years later when I joined Taxi that I started learning about music libraries, and I started submitting my music as we all do and getting forwards. And then those forwards turned into library deals, and one thing led to another, and I started getting more deals and more deals, and getting more placements on shows. And then the money started rolling in. There were no more $24,000 checks, let me tell you. They were pennies. But I could see the thought process of building up a catalog of music and getting them in as many libraries as you can. And, at the time, there were still a lot of non-exclusive libraries and exclusive libraries. And, there was a lot of these royalty-free libraries and, a lot of nonsense going on. But, I did learn a lot. And even back then, 20 years ago, I had the idea of putting together a music library of my own. But I just felt like I didn't have enough knowledge in the business at that time. So I needed to kind of go through the process and work through it. And, here I am 20 years later thinking, I need to do this. A couple of years ago, I spent time just writing a lot of trailer music, and I put out 7 trailer albums. And that was when it hit me. I should put together my own library and pitch my own music. And so that's where it started. But then I got the idea that, I've got a whole bunch of other tracks that I've never gotten placed. And it wasn't that the music was bad, there just weren't the opportunities. So why did I incorporate that into my catalog? But I didn't have enough material, and that's when I started bringing in other composers. And so that's where we are today.
I remember the famous to you and me, conversation. I was sitting in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's, I think, or Jinky's restaurant somewhere out near Agora. And you and I were on the phone, and I said, well, gee, if you're starting a library, why don't you run listings with Taxi? And you said, oh, that's a good idea. So I'm glad that you did, and that's worked out pretty well. We can talk about that in a few minutes. But so let's talk about ingesting music. You know what? Let's go back to that previous comment. So I asked Steve in a phone call earlier today, I'm guessing, that you get like half of your music from running listings with Taxi. And he said no. And what was the percentage of stuff in your catalog that has come through Taxi and Taxi members?
Oh, probably 99.9%.
And who got the other 1/10%? I need to know.
It may have been a referral from one of the existing composers. They said, "Hey, I've got a buddy who can do this. Would you take a listen?"
And it was probably a Taxi member referring another Taxi member.
Oh, I don't recall if the other person, the person who did the referral was a Taxi member, of course. But I don't know if the other one was not. I don't remember. I
was being facetious, but you can't see me, so you don't know that.
Right.
And just a reminder for those of you who showed up for class late today, once again, having server issues with the connection. I got a great picture on Steve, but he can't see me. So we're using a phone to communicate with each other. That's why his audio sounds kind of telephonic. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to punt, and it's working. So now that you're on the receiving end of getting music from these people, let's talk about the ingestion process. So you start out, and I'm sure that you do your homework, and you look at the industry and say, oh, okay, so this genre is a good one. A lot of people use it. Here's another good genre. You run listings with Taxi. We send you music for each of those genres. Maybe get 5 forwards, maybe get 25 forwards. It kind of depends. Yes, Steve knows that we see him. Peter Rahill's asking, does Steve know that we can see him? Yes, he does.
Why? Am I doing something weird?
No, you're not. You're not doing a Jeffrey Toobin. Think about it. Anyway, that's as far as I'm going with that joke. So then we send you the stuff, and you have to audition it, and you start reaching out to people to talk to them about signing the music that you've heard from them. And I'm guessing in many cases you might say, do you have more of that, or could you do a full album of that genre? So from the point where you have that conversation, what is that conversation about, and where does it go step by step from there? Because this is the part that people don't really understand about music libraries, that there's a lot of work up front. and things can bomb out in the process. So please explain that process.
Yeah. Let me backtrack a bit and just say, like, as a composer who has submitted to Taxi for years and years and has gotten forwards and has never heard back from the listing party, I know it's really frustrating and everybody complains about that.
Right.
So when I do a listing with Taxi, that means I need these things. Okay, I'm not just doing it for fun or so you can pocket $5 for everybody who makes a submission. This is material that I need.
Yeah.
So
which is the case with all the libraries. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get back, could be anywhere from 4 forwards to, I think the biggest one was maybe 25 or 30. It was a lot. So that means I do need these, and I will immediately, once I get that notification, I will listen to the music and pick out the ones that I want to offer a contract with. And generally speaking, I probably send out offers to 90% of what I get in.
Wow.
The 10% that don't get offers, it's not that the music is bad, it's just not exactly what I need. Even though the screeners did fantastic jobs of giving me fantastic music, there was just something about those tracks that I couldn't use them. So I send out letters, and so oftentimes I get responses from people and say, I got your email before I got my notification from Taxi that it was forwarded. So my whole thing is, if I need these tracks, I'm going to get back to you right away. I don't understand why other libraries don't, and it's whatever their business model is, I don't I'm not privy to that information, but this is how I do business.
I can tell you what the difference is. The difference is because you're in building mode, and those other libraries are well established and they have a rhythm and they have a big client base, things like that. As a matter of fact, we should talk about the meeting. Taxi does quarterly Zooms with many of our library clients, anywhere from typically 12 to maybe 25 or 30 library clients. And we hang out as colleagues, and everybody's really open-minded and they share information. And on the last one we had, which was, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think, we were talking about this issue of members, music going into the black hole. We forward them and they don't hear from anybody. And the libraries confided, I'm not telling tales out of school and I'm not mentioning any names, but like Steve, when the libraries run a listing, they have a need. Either it's for something really quick for a TV show they're working on, or they're stocking up on a genre because they know a new season is coming up on a show that they've got a relationship with, or they realize that the orchestral stuff in their catalog sounds like it's using 1998 samples in a lot of cases, and there's just better sounding strings out there today. Myriad reasons why they run listings with Taxi. The one thing almost all of them agreed on, I think I asked them to raise their hands, was the many people, it didn't used to be a thing, but it is now, many libraries accept music online. They have an online submission portal. And I said, be honest with me, guys. Tell me how many of you actually get to that music. And we found out that virtually all of them were guilty of not listening to it as quickly as the people who send it to them would like. And somebody in the room said, I got to admit, I'm 7 months behind. And all of a sudden, other people chimed in and said, yeah, me too. So, and the reason I'm telling you this is Taxi's got a new thing coming up that we haven't announced to the public yet. We are officially starting the programming and the building of it tomorrow that will solve some of these problems that we have long had for our members. So we're excited about it. But going back to the big point, the elephant in the room is that all it took was one library to say, yes, I will accept submissions online. Here's a portal. And then another library went, wow, maybe they're hearing something that I'm not, and the FOMO kicked in. And then a third one had FOMO, and a fourth one. And before you know it, about 60% of the industry has a submission portal. But I have a feeling they don't listen at all in some cases. In many cases, they take forever to get to it. And the one thing they all agree on is they don't have the time to start writing back to people saying, well, I listened to your thing. If only it did this, or if only, it was shorter or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So you, because you are in building mode, and running probably more listings than the average library because you're in building mode, you do have that. I don't know if it's luxury of time, but
I have no time.
yeah, it's not the luxury of time. You have the motivation to reach out to these people as quickly as possible and get your catalog built, because you need to get up. What do they call it when a snowball's rolling downhill? Momentum. You need a certain amount of tracks to have momentum, and because Taxi is your main resource, you're doing the right thing by reaching out to people. So there's my little 5-minute interlude. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, let's stay on that topic for just a second. So even if I was in business, if I'm 10 years from now and I'm still doing this, I'm still alive. I don't understand that business model of having an open portal of submissions. If somebody submits a track, and we kind of had this discussion a little while ago, that if somebody sends me a track with a tuba and a bagpipe, and it's the greatest tuba bagpipe track I've ever heard in my life, what do I do with it? Do I wait until I get 12 other tuba bagpipe tracks and put out an album? So I just kind of don't understand how that works. For me, I have specific goals in mind, and every year I'm going to lay out, I'm going to do 12 albums this quarter, or 20 albums, whatever the number is, and they're targeted for certain genres and for certain styles. So I think I'm always going to be looking for specific things to fulfill. So whether I go through Taxi or the existing roster of composers, I just don't see myself ever having an open submission policy on my website, to be honest.
Yeah, I honestly think it's disingenuous on the part of many libraries that they have it. I understand why they did it, but if they aren't able to service it and get back to people,
right,
or even listen, forget getting back to them, even listen to this stuff in any sort of timely fashion, they should just do the right thing and take it down. But hopefully this new thing that we're going to be rolling out in a couple of months, hopefully before the rally, Taxi Road Rally, November 7th through the 10th here in beautiful Los Angeles. Every Taxi member gets 2 free tickets. I think that what we're going to roll out will solve that problem for them, and make our members very, very happy. So when you talk about, what was it, tuba and something?
Bagpipe.
Okay, so tuba and bagpipe, even if you put together an album that put it out there, it's a genre or a style and instrumentation that is very unlikely to be used ever. So you may corner the market on that for the once every 3 years when somebody goes looking for it, if you put out that album. But I think what you're saying is that as a new library, any library, you need to analyze the marketplace, see what there's a need for, see if there are any open slots in the market, and then fill those slots by having the music, so that you could reach out to the editor of the Music Soup and say, hey, I noticed that you guys use a lot of this, but I hear a lot of the same tracks being played over and over. Would you like some fresh meat on that bone? Let me send you my catalog. And is that a fair description of how you make the decisions as to what kind of music that your catalog needs to have in it?
Yes, and as you pointed out, because we are in catalog building mode, there are certain genres that we kind of have to fill out, but then we are also doing research as to, what do we think is going to be needed. And you need a crystal ball for that, because nobody really knows, but you take your best shot and try to follow trends. That's all we can do.
Okay, so Are there any trends? I know somebody's going to ask this in the chat room, so I'm heading them off at the pass. Are there any trends that you see on the horizon for the back half of 2024?
Nothing specific. I mean, one of the things I'm trying to do with this library is hit genres that a lot of people don't have or haven't really thought of yet. And I don't want to mention any details. I don't want to give away my secrets, but
right.
Some of the things we're doing. But just like this earlier in the year, we made sure we released an album of political campaign music, because guess what? It's voting election year.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to have, a lot of stuff out there.
I've got to say, we put together a taxi compilation of election night music and sent it out to all of our library clients, and it got snapped up literally like within the hour. Incredible stuff coming in from our members. There was one piece in particular that probably made it into my personal top 10 of taxi submissions over 32 years of instrumental music. So now let's talk about, here's where libraries really earn their 50% for the work they do. Explain the steps now. The music has gotten to you. You've auditioned what we've sent you in the forward batches, and you've reached out to the composers. What are the things you need to know from the composers before you can officially sign a deal with them?
So I will send out a welcome packet. I'll send out a contract and our metadata spreadsheet, and with instructions on how to fill it out. So this is what I need from you. It's laid out perfectly. There should be no questions, but if you have any questions, get back to me. So, but one of the things that I've had issues with is that when composers, if they read a listing in Taxi and it says, and of course all my listings are going to say it's an exclusive deal, and I make the offer to them, I'd like your track, and then they come back and say, well, I really don't want to do it exclusive. It's like, did you not read the listing? It said exclusive. That kind of thing happens more frequently than I'd like it to happen. The other thing is when somebody comes back and we don't do reversions just because that's our business model.
Right.
And people will come back, and it's fine to ask. That's okay to open the door and say, can I have a reversion? And I say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I do sometimes get people that come back and they've rewritten portions of my contract and they say, I would like to change it to this. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't do that. So that's a little presumptuous on the part of the composer. I would never do that. I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to ask, would you be open to this situation? But to, have the guts to suggest, here's a rewritten contract that suits me, not you.
Yeah, the reason that people, this is my personal opinion, the reason that libraries don't do reversions, or not forget the reversions, the reason they don't modify contracts is eventually you're going to have 500, 1,000, 2,000 composers and artists in your library, and who the hell could remember, oh yes, this person gets a reversion, that one gets an extra 5% because they're special. Nobody could remember that. It's hard enough for a record company with 100 artists on their label and a team of 25 people to service those artists on the admin side to keep that stuff straight. There's no way a library could do it. So it's not that anybody's trying to be hard on you or take advantage of you. This is me speaking on behalf of the entire music library industry. It's just, it would be impossible to let each composer customize their contract. And the only way you could, even if you had the bandwidth to do that, you'd have to have a lawyer look at that customization. And now you've got lawyers at $500 an hour going back and forth. Just because a musician, a composer writes it up doesn't mean that it would hold up in court. And the same would be true if you wrote it up. You guys could make each other happy and say, it sounds good to me, sounds good to me as well. But if you ever had to go to court and defend it, it wouldn't sound good to a judge or a jury, I imagine. So, yeah.
Yeah, we just can't do stuff like that. And the other thing is that we do exclusive in perpetuity, and I know like that forever sounds like a long time. And the reason we have to do that is because we are dealing with so many sub-publishers throughout the world. And for us to be able to pull a track down from everybody's hard drive would be just a nightmare. So, we just can't offer that option.
There is a major music library, one of the biggest ones in the world, and they actually do that. And either monthly or weekly, I'm on their email list, and I get an email saying, please pull these 5 tracks from the catalog. Nobody, I can pretty much say that nobody in the industry is going to open their email, go open up that catalog of 50,000 tracks or whatever it is, and start searching for these guys. Even if the search mechanism makes it easy, nobody's going to do it. It's so, yeah, I've never understood that. You have to go through a process called pre-clearing, is what I would call it, where, okay, so now you've decided you want it, and they're fine with doing an exclusive in perpetuity. You have to make sure that they have the rights that they claim they have. Talk about that. What, as far as on the sheet that you need them to fill out. You know what? I'm going to read you something. This is from another library, and there's nothing on here that would give it away, but this is just one page of their questions. Do you or your co-writers have an exclusive film TV representation deal for the song with someone like blah, 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 blah? Do you have all master owners, publishers, and writers been listed and signed in the contract? Have all master owners been listed and signed? Oh, that's repetitive. Are there any uncleared copyright samples in this song? By this we mean a piece of someone else's song that you added to your song that's not a buyout. So it goes on and on. There's a whole page of it, and this is just one of 4 pages. And I know that all libraries, I would say 100% of the library, and I probably know more library owners than maybe any other person on the face of the earth, they all have the same issue, which is musicians tend to get this stuff wrong. They either don't fill it out. It's like a late homework assignment. They don't fill it out. They don't get it in on time. They fill it out, and the library looks at it and goes, well, that's weird. You can't have this and that. It's got to be one or the other. And they reach out, and the musician goes, oh, I misunderstood the question. Fair enough. Or, oh, that's right. So I would imagine that the due diligence on a single thing, it takes you a really long time, doesn't it? And then sometimes you get 2/3 of the way down the road on the due diligence and find out that you can't make a deal, and now you've just pissed away 2 or 3 hours of your time going down that road. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I feel like the contract itself covers all that ground, because they are saying that they agree to these terms and that they have the right to have their music used. They're not using illegal samples. Any co-writers they work with also have to fill out the exact same agreement. It's putting the onus on them to make sure that everything is on the up and up. There are errors and omissions insurance that covers these issues that happen. Should they happen, and they will happen. What are you going to do? I can't spend the time. I'm not a lawyer, and I can't spend the time doing forensic work on library tracks to see if they are on the up and up. It's a little bit of a gamble. You only live once.
Yeah, I know libraries that do intense forensics on every track, and they find that so many of them bomb out. And in some cases, it's just a dopey little mistake. Fair enough. We all make mistakes. And in other cases, it's people trying to slip one by you. It's like, yeah, there's another writer on this, but I haven't talked to the guy in 25 years, so I'm just not going to put him on the sheet or tell you about it. Wow. I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of a library owner.
Well, one of the things I will do though is every track that comes in, I will Shazam it just to see that it's it doesn't come up any possibility of plagiarism.
Yeah.
Shazam's not the end all of plagiarism checks, but it's just another tool to use.
You know what? You just reminded me of something that has very little to do with this episode, but it's important, and I want to mention it to everybody in the room. I don't think I mentioned it to you, but Friday night I found myself watching a show called America's Sweethearts on Netflix. I don't know what possessed me, and don't make fun of me, but it's about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders and their.
Oh, there you go. That's why.
Well, no, actually, that wasn't the reason I did it. I really was like, I was looking for something that was an hour long because it was late. I didn't want to start a 2-hour movie, and I didn't want to get sucked into anything and end up being up till 4 o'clock in the morning. So that was my criterion. I thought, all right, this is mindless TV. And it turns out the first episode was but it was okay. But I did go into the second episode, so it was somewhat addictive. Here's the thing, is I had on the captioning, and they do a really good job on that show of describing the instrumental cues. So
I've seen that stuff happen before, yeah.
And I'm watching it. Yeah, I ended up watching 3 hours, not because of girls out there doing their little cowboy cheerleader dancey stuff, although that was good side entertainment. I'm such a nerd. I'm sitting there with my phone, Shazamming stuff, and also reading these parenthetically included descriptions of cues. And I thought, this is like a master class for people to understand genres and moods of music that they're making, because we know from doing TAXITV episodes in the past where we do name that genre, and people will put in the chat room, it'd be really good if you were flying, or this sounds like a sunset. No, that's not a genre. That's you're describing a scene or a use. What is the genre? Because people need to look at metadata and make sure it's good so that it can be searched and found. So if you put skateboard in your genre, that's not good. Anyway, I highly recommend this to everybody watching. No joke. Yes, some guys may like it better than others because it is the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. You will not believe the rigors of their tryout process. It's like getting in the Olympics. I have so much respect for them. I've got to be honest. I was a little bit of a jerk about cheerleaders, thinking that they were all, just cute little vapid cheerleaders. They're not. These girls are driven. They work really hard. They're extremely athletic. They really all love each other. They're a sisterhood. The show is quite inspiring, worth watching. I can't believe I'm recommending this. But the best thing about it for me, being a music nerd, is those parenthetic inclusions of descriptions of the music. Things that you normally wouldn't think of, like emotionally upbeat, sparkly piano track plays. I would never think of the word sparkly, but when I saw that word and I listened to the track, I thought, what a great descriptor that is. So
what if they use AI for that?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Anyway, I highly recommend it, everybody. Seriously, I was sitting there the whole time thinking of Taxi members, and I might even play an episode for a rally panel this year. It was so eye-opening. Anyway, enough enthusiasm about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, or as they call themselves, DCC. How often do you hear a piece of music, you want to sign it, you go through your little pre-clearing process and find out that for one reason or another, either they don't, they only want to do non-exclusive because they didn't read the listing, or you don't feel comfortable that they've got all their ducks in a row on legal end of things? How often do things fall apart where you say, gee, I'm so sorry, it just looks like we can't work together on this one?
More often than I'd like, and like I mentioned, they'll come back with terms that I can't abide by, and basically I just come back and explain what the issues are, and it's I'd love to work with you, but if you don't want to proceed, then that's fine. No worries, and we'll catch you next time. And sometimes they come back and they change their mind, and sometimes and everybody's very nice about it. I mean, they try, but yeah, that's going to happen. So there's a lot of music out there. It's not like one track is going to make or break this album. I usually have more material than I really should be putting out. I guess that's a good problem to have. So, unless it was that one bagpipe and tuba track that I need to have that one.
Let's talk about metadata. People sometimes complain, gee, I got signed to a library and my music is just laying there like a LOX. Metadata could be part of the problem. I mean, there's metadata and there's tagging, I guess. But, of course, you're going to have your name spelled correctly. By the way, if you have a middle initial D or J or B or any middle initial, and that shows up, everything in your life should be consistent. Don't be Mike Laskow on some things, Michael Laskow on others, Michael D on others. Be consistent throughout so that your PRO can find you if necessary. It's all part of an effort to make money flow from somebody else's bank account to yours. And you have done such a good job in this book of laying out moods and genres and back in the appendices. And I would think that it would be worth buying the book just to have those lists. And I think that when people sit down and create a track, that they should actually look at the list, because what pops into your head probably won't be as comprehensive as what's available on these pages. And you might go, oh, I could include that as well, which gives you one more option to be found. So in your experience, do the people that you ask to do that get it 30% right, 50% right, 100% right most of the time?
Metadata tagging is one of the weakest parts of anybody's process. I hate doing metadata, and I imagine most everybody does too. I did a class at last year's rally on metadata, and I'll give you this little anecdote that around the turn of the century, I was a web developer, and that was when the internet was still pretty fresh, and we were all learning about SEO, which is search engine optimization. And we learned that the best way for your website to come up high in the Google searches or Alta Vista or whatever you were using back then is by having good metadata. And so the title tag, what shows up on the bar of your browser, those are keywords. There are keywords tags that go in there. The body of the text, all of that is searched by Google. They go out throughout the internet, and then they just pull in all these keywords and index them. So whenever you do a search for something, if you have really good keywords, you're going to come up high in lists. In fact, at that time, I had my own website, and I had done all this SEO for Composer for Hire. And for a couple of years, I was the number 1 or number 2 search if somebody searched for that phrase. Didn't make any money from it, but I did come up high in the search results. Okay, so that anecdote that's what these music libraries, if you're on Source Audio or whatever, system that you're populating your catalog with, these are search engines. A client is going to come to your site and they are going to type in words that they're going to search for. And, they're just going to type in, whatever comes out of their gut that they're looking for. Happy dog music. Okay, whatever that means,
Because that's the scene. They've just given their dog a treat and it's a Chewy commercial, and the editor's thinking happy dog music, right? Okay.
Exactly. So the point of this whole thing is that you really need to spend a great amount of time working on your tagging. Great keywords. The moods, all the adjectives, everything, the adverbs that describe your music. So a client can find it no matter what they put in. So you do have to spend a lot of extra time. Interesting, we talked about this at Disco in their I forget what their library system is called, but they do automatic tagging for you. It's an AI generated system where it listens to the music and they add tags. And it's okay. I mean, I haven't done an updated look to see how it's been improved. But you could start with something like that, and then you could jump to. I should pull up one real quick just to take a look at what the tags look like. And then put in your own tags. Like here's a crime drama track, and this was for New Age, Golden Age Noir. So the tags they used, tempo was fast. The mood or feel was bright, confident, dramatic, epic, hopeful, powerful, romantic, uplifting, and warm. That's what the AI found just by listening to the music. Okay. But then you can take that as a starting point, and then really listen to the music and try to understand what kind of a scene would be using this music and how it would how it would be used, how it would support the scene, and you want to try to visualize how it could be used, especially. Like not only our tracks, you're going to find it in reality TV, you're going to find it in sporting events. But you know what? We're also doing these 30 and 60-second cut downs, which are designed for commercials, for ads. So you need to kind of think about, well, how could this music be used? Could it be used in a car commercial? Could it be used in a jewelry commercial? So you want to think about keywords that would help push that track into the direction of ad agencies that are looking for music for their jewelry commercial.
Question is, do people do a good job of knowing what it is that their music would? My experience from doing that sort of test on TAXITV with our viewers is they were kind of pitching very wide. Maybe it was to have more inclusivity, like the more terms I have, even though it's not really indie rock. I'm going to say it's indie rock because it's just me. I'm independent, and yes, it's rock, but it doesn't really sound like the genre indie rock. So as
that falls in the category of keyword spamming, which is a bad thing. If you're putting in keywords that have nothing to do with what just trying to get search results, that's going to reflect badly on you as the composer, badly on the library. You want to avoid doing that.
That's great advice. And then the question is, do you see stuff come through from your composers, especially the ones that are newer to the industry and new to your library, where they might be spamming like that, and then you have to have the conversation with them and go in and correct and de-spam their stuff?
Actually, not too often, but the problem is that they only list 2 or 3 keywords, and it's really not enough to help them, much less spam. So, that's one of the things I wish composers would spend more time with and be more thoughtful about taking the time to create keywords that are going to be useful and help propel your track. You may think, well, gosh, this might, I don't want to spend a half an hour on each track. Well, over the lifetime of the music, how much are you going to make out of that when you've invested 3 or 4 hours total on creating this track production-wise? If you're going to add another 20 minutes to add tags, that's a pretty cheap investment.
Not to mention the fact that we have all known friends of ours, fellow, well, I'm not a composer, but you have fellow taxi members, and you guys have all seen it. I'm looking at the chat room right now, where people go, yeah, I signed with this library, and this piece of music has been in there for 2 years, and I haven't gotten anything. They suck. Well, maybe nobody knocked on their door and said, hey, do you have any XYZ? Or it could be that they did knock on the door looking for XYZ, but because of poor tagging on your part when you submitted the music to the library, they're not finding it. So it may not be the library's fault, as you just explained. And so maybe you should, as the composer or artist, go revisit your music in the catalogs that it's in with Steve's book in your hand and go down the list of examples and try and improve your tagging. Does that sound like a fruitful endeavor?
It's like exercise. You got to do it. The more you do it, the more it becomes a regular part of your life. And, you just get used to doing it, and you do it quicker each time. But yeah, you need to be more thoughtful about all of this. Besides the stuff that's in my book, which is, I appreciate you pushing that. Casey Hurwitz just put out a tagging application. He originally wrote it that it was an app for the PC only, it wasn't available on Mac, but now it's a cloud-based, or it's on the internet. He's got it broken down into genres, different categories, and it's a great way to just, I put my music on a loop and let it play and play and play and listen to it and just go through the checklist and go adventure, click, yes, sappy, no, that's not it, and just go through all the words and build up your tag list. And it's like, I don't know, it's like a $5 program or something. It's
called Sync Music Tag?
Sync Tag or something. It's syncmusictag.com.
I think there's a link to it in our current Taxi newsletter. So if you go to taxi.com and go to newsletter and look under cool stuff, it will be in there. If you can't find it. And by the way, I personally put a lot of effort into that newsletter with some really good stuff in there, and I can see how many people read it. It's amazing to me how many people are just letting this incredibly good information that's in the Taxi newsletter, they don't even bother to open it. Or if they open it, they click on one thing. And I'm not saying this because I, work like a 14 to 16 hour weekend on it every month. It's because there are golden nuggets in the pages of that newsletter that can move your career forward. And I do find that our most successful members watch TAXITV, go to the road rally, and read the newsletter and participate in the forum. So I'm just saying, we lay it all out there for you. And the road rally is coming up again, November 7th through the 10th in Los Angeles, and registration is now open. And registration is loading up way faster than last year. So get your free seats while you can get them. What's the difference between, give examples of keywords. There's genre and then there's keywords. Are keywords, could it be bicycle, and could it be, well, I should say that you only do instrumental in this library so far, but you could have.
Actually, that's not true. We did some vocal albums for Christmas songs this year.
Oh, okay, that's right.
This last quarter, but yeah, generally it's instrumental.
So yeah, I mean, if you have a song about, well, let's take Melanie song. I got a brand new pair of roller skates. Throwback to the late '60s. And so that would be a keyword. You'd put roller skates in there for your keyword. Can you give examples of other types of keywords, not specific ones necessarily, but how does somebody land on good keywording practices?
Read books, try to be literate, and understand how to describe something in a way, and then just break it down into the key components. But realize, look, every library has different methods of supplying keywords. Some of them have little check boxes that, here's a preset of keywords you can put in. Some of them want you to limit it to like 10 keywords. Some of them don't want you to do it at all, and they'll do it themselves. There are services that, we can hire that do that, but I mean, I don't know how good they are. I would rather the composer who is the closest to this music invent the keywords to really sell it. Keywords can be a free form way to describe a track and to give it some life. We don't have limits when we do ours of how many words you can have. which I think is really nice. I think that was kind of a vague answer. Did that help?
But I'm looking at your book, and under Appendix B is mood/feelings, and you've got happy/positive. So you've got words like animated, beautiful, bold, blissful, brassy, blah 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 blah. I would never think of the word brassy. So having a list in front of you where you can go, oh, that works, I think is really good.
But and that's a finite list. That was what I had at the time. I think you can build your own lists as you go. Find words that work for you. Start with the book. I mean, you got to start from some place. And again, Casey's tagging is another place. You don't have to rely on one resource or another. Just use whatever you can to get the job done. But the important thing is to have great keywords that are going to help you sell your track. Not even sell your track. It has to be found. If it can't be found, nobody's going to be able to license it. And if it doesn't get licensed, it's not going to get placed. And if it doesn't get placed, you don't make any money.
Let's talk about titles for a minute. I'm like the world's biggest advocate of creating titles that telegraph what the music is going to sound like, or maybe what kind of scene it could go in. Maybe if there's a marriage of those two things, even better. As a relatively new library owner who used to be a composer pitching your stuff, looking back now, do you feel that you did a good job of titling your tracks is part A of the question. So answer that if you would first.
Yeah, I think it got better over time. It's helpful to come up with a title that describes the track's purpose or what the feeling is that you might be having. But also, you need to be able to attract attention when a search comes up. Puns are actually quite useful.
What are puns? Like jokes?
Puns. Well, not just jokes like. I'm going to go blank.
Welcome to my world. It's a bitch doing this live on camera.
Yeah. I can't think of one, but but something that kind of, or dogs gone wild.
Okay, or
there's your happy dog, music.
How about for the Olympics, sloppy seconds for the silver medal winner?
Why not?
I actually heard a discussion.
I'd be okay with that one.
I heard a discussion on talk radio going home the other night, and they were talking about how bronze medal winners are the happiest of all medal winners because they probably didn't expect to win a medal, so they're just happy to be up on the podium. Versus, silver is like the worst place to be, and gold is how can I ever do this again? It's kind of useless information, but there you go. I spread it around. When I absorb important information like that, like the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleader show, I feel compelled to share it with my people.
Yes.
Okay, so the day that you and I had like an hour-long discussion, I was sitting in my car at Jinky's restaurant, and we were talking about music supervisors. And everybody, I don't think I've ever met a musician who wants to be in the industry that might not give up the tip of a finger or a toe. Let's go with toes because most people don't play instruments with their toes. That might not donate a little toe to get a meeting with like VP of A&R at Capitol Records, or a music supervisor that works on summer blockbusters all the time. And I remember that day saying to you, how is it going getting your library out there? You hadn't done the Sub Pub deal or any Sub Pub yet, so you were out on your own trying to get people, music supervisors and editors, to call you back. How hard was that?
It's extremely hard. Nobody wants to talk to you.
Why is that? They don't know you personally. That I could understand. I'm kidding, of course. Steve just lets my jokes go right over his head. Doesn't
Jen Malone, she's a big-time music supervisor now.
Right. By the way, used to be a taxi screener. Just want to let you know that.
Oh, okay. I think I knew that at one time. She actually did some quotes for my book when I wrote it.
Yeah.
I've reached out to her to tell her about my library. Crickets. She won't return my phone call.
Yeah. How did you get her to give you the quote for the book?
It was 7 years ago. So she may not have been that busy or big. I don't know. But yeah, and this would be a really good person to know about my library. It's not a dead end, but I'm just saying that, it's really hard.
I think a lot of people wrongly want to get a hold of music supervisors because what they don't realize is I'm not business savvy enough yet to deal with a music supervisor, and I may not have my ducks in a row enough yet that a music supervisor would be like, boy, am I glad that I met you. And that's why they prefer to go through libraries, because the music has been vetted, it's been properly tagged. There's E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, which is a big deal for the end users. And when they're dealing directly with an independent artist or composer, there could be all kinds of problems that pop up, like, oh, you forgot to include your cousin Joey that you co-wrote this with 12 years ago, and now we're all in a lawsuit, whereas a library would have E&O insurance to cover that sort of thing. So I get it, yet everybody thinks of them as kind of like a pinnacle, something, oh, if only this music supervisor would hear my music, they will fall in love with it and they will want to work with me on every production they're working on. So I remember that day feeling your pain when I asked you that question, how's the slog been going, getting a hold of supervisors, and you said virtually impossible to get a call back. Yeah, and
look, every business really ultimately is a business of relationships, and you have to build these relationships to build trust, and they don't trust me yet.
Right.
I know. I've met some of these people in passing. You go to conventions, different things in the industry, and that's the thing. It takes time. Tracy and Vance Marino are the best at meeting people and getting friendly with them and building up confidence. And I think you talked about being an introvert. I'm an introvert as well, and it's hard to talk to people.
If you get me on the subject of music for media, I'm good. Talk to me about saltwater fishing, I'm good. Talk to me about Beatles, Eagles, Steely Dan, I'm good. Any other subject, I feel like I'm just BSing my way through a conversation I don't really want to be in. So remember that. For those of you who walk up to me at the road rally, there was your list of subjects that you're allowed to talk to me about and get a response. This is why Barden and I are such good friends. We could stand in a room together and just stare at each other. No words exchanged. We've known each other for like 20 years, and I think we've spent 10 of those years not even saying anything other than, hi.
That's so funny. It's not enough in this business to be a good composer and have great music, to have great, be a music library with great music in your catalog. There's so much more to it. There's so many more pieces to the puzzle. And again, it's, relationships. Yeah,
here's a good example. I'm starting to put together panel ideas and reaching out to panelists for the Road Rally this year. I saw a big music supervisor who does a lot of big TV commercials mentioned somewhere on the internet. And I Googled the person and couldn't find any good contact information, reached out to a couple people that I thought might know where to find this gentleman. I got a working email address. I reached out to him. And turns out that he's a huge fan of vinyl. Actually has an online vinyl store, has a huge personal collection of vinyl. And I happen to own a first pressing of Meet the Beatles, first mono release in the United States, first record I ever bought when I was 9 years old, and I've still got it. It's sitting like 12 feet from me as I'm talking to you. And I emailed him and said, "You're a fan of vinyl. I'm not nearly the fan of vinyl you are, but I am an audio engineer and I understand why vinyl is making a comeback, blah, blah, blah. Want to meet for lunch?" And we did. 3 weeks later, we met for lunch. I talked to him about the Road Rally, said, "Would you be interested in doing a thing on advertising at the Road Rally?" And he said, "Yeah, I would." I didn't even ask him. He knows what Taxi is, but I didn't ask him to run listings. And it was killing me because this guy works on big national commercials every day of his life, and I would love to bring those to our Taxi members, and they will come in due time. But he'll come to the Road Rally and he will see the professionalism in the community and the quality of the whole event, and he'll be impressed enough that when I call him after the Road Rally to thank him up and down again for doing it, I will have earned his trust and hopefully his respect to the point where I could say, let us run one listing. Let's see what we come up with. But you're right. Sometimes you have to play the long game. It's not about... It's like dating. If you walk up to a girl in a bar and say, "I think you have beautiful eyes, want to go home with me?" You're going to go home with a bruised cheek probably, or a missing tooth. Or nowadays, maybe a lawsuit. Maybe you'll trigger them into suing you. But, the long game. It matters.
Yeah, networking is an important skill. I mean, we should have a class at the rally on networking, how to talk to people.
I think we did with, I think Tracy and Vance did networking. And you're right, they are like world-class experts at it. The number of people that they have, famous people that they have photographs of themselves with, is kind of astonishing. And I often wonder, when I was starting out in the business back in the mid-'70s, and I was very privileged to work with people like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Neil Young, and Eric Clapton, and all these great people, you did not ask. Nobody had phones, so it wasn't like, "Hey man, let's do a selfie." That just wasn't a thing. And God forbid you brought a camera into a session at a recording studio. If the maintenance shop had a camera and you guys were having a fun night on a particular session, you went and grabbed the camera, took pictures, that was okay. But for an engineer to have a camera, "Hey man, let's get a shot of us together working on this record," not cool. Nowadays it is. So you have to read the room and read the people. And I hate to recommend being strategic about building relationships, but there's a certain amount of it. And sometimes you just meet somebody and it clicks. You never know. I'm trying to see if I've missed anything because I want to open this up for live Q&A from our very perky audience today. I think we've got it. Audio levels. I did not grow up pushing faders in the era of LUFs. I don't have a really clear understanding as to what a LUF really is, although I've looked up the definition a few times, but it's so infrequent that I need to even think about LUFs that I keep forgetting it. So, being a library owner now, before, and I know you well enough to know that you're probably pretty fastidious about making sure your levels are good when you were sending out music as a composer. Now that you're on the receiving end, do you find a lot of inconsistency in the levels you get? Do you have to talk to people and say, "Hey, dude, this is a really good piece, but levels are low"?
Yeah, actually not too often. A lot of the tracks that I get are mixed pretty darn well. Although I do get a lot of material that's slamming at 0 dB, and when we go into mastering, there's not a lot of headroom to do anything with, and because we do like to leave a little space in there, and so what's going to end up happening is we're going to end up compressing down the audio. So it's kind of works as a detriment, for the composer. Occasionally, I do get tracks that are at quite a low level, and sometimes I will send it back and ask them to address it. But overall, we don't ask for any LUFS requirements. We're not targeting streaming services. I just ask for reasonable levels, with like a dynamic range of 4 to 8 dB. Especially if you were doing orchestral stuff, if you get stuff that's super quiet in the beginning and then it gets super loud at the end, it's going to be kind of hard to master that, because you're going to get a lot of stuff that's just too darn quiet. And this music, this is not like music you're going to just listen to on a CD or in your car or on your phone. This has to be serviceable behind the scene in music on TV. So the levels can't be too exaggerated between the quietest and the loudest. And that takes a little practice to kind of get in the habit of mixing for TV.
And you mentioned mastering. It sounds like you master everything that comes in before you put it out. Is that a true statement?
I am now. I didn't in the beginning, and then I started listening back to the tracks, and there was just such a disparaging difference in levels that I thought, I gotta work on it. And I'm still trying to master mastering. It's getting pretty good, and fortunately the tracks that come in sound pretty good. Only occasionally do I have to go in with some EQ and kind of sculpt out the track. Generally, they sound pretty good. It's really just a matter of balancing the levels so everything is sort of consistent.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that mastering was invented. I did that on a show about vinyl with Tony Van Veen from Disc Makers a couple of weeks ago. But mastering was invented to determine the depth of the groove when they were cutting the master lacquer on the lathe, which is basically an electromagnet with a diamond cutting into the lacquer on it, and that determined the more amplitude, the more volume you gave it, the deeper the grooves would go. And if you get the grooves too deep, they poke through on the other side at their point, or they bump up against the walls of the other grooves. So it was invented for an electromechanical reason, but from an artistic standpoint or an aesthetic standpoint, you don't want to have to reach over and turn up the volume on track 2 on your record back in the vinyl days, right, because it was mixed at a lower level than track 1. So the mastering engineer would take care of the size of the groove, the depth of the groove, all that stuff. They would also use a little bit of limiter or compression and their ears. That's an important part that people forget about. They get way too technical. But yeah, you could have something that looks really bad on a meter, but if you listen to track 1 and track 2, they sound about right, or they sound very right, even though they wouldn't look good on a scope or on a meter. So you do have to interject common sense in your ears into it. But I think that's really good that you do that as a library, because I know libraries that want people to submit music that's already mastered, but you could have 10 different pieces of music mastered by 10 different composers, and it's still not going to accomplish that overall level match that you're looking for.
Well, in my mind, that's the whole point of mastering, is that so there's consistency.
Yeah, I agree. See, there's one more thing we could talk about at a party, Steve.
Fishing and mastering.
Yeah, Steve and Michael in a corner talking about mastering. Oh boy, these guys really know how to party.
For sure.
I remember running into you on the sidewalk in Anaheim outside the convention center. I was on my way into the NAMM show, and you were on your way out or to grab lunch or something. And we didn't know each other well, but we knew each other. It was like, oh, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? All right, see ya.
Yep, I remember that meeting.
Yep, two of the great conversationalists.
Yeah.
All right, let's take some audience Q&A. Jillian, I'm a master debater. I'm not going to touch that.
We're going to cut that part out of this, right?
Oh, yeah.
It goes on the air.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, by the way, it's really helpful when you guys type the word question before your question in all caps, just so it pops out a little bit better for me. It's Geely. Okay. Jilly. Ah, okay. Question from Alan Hall. How many keywords are optimal for a cue? That's a great question.
I don't know if there's an optimal number. The more the merrier, I would say.
Well, when are you spamming or overstuffing? How?
Well, they're not reading a list of the keywords in the track. They're doing a search, and the search engine is going to run through those keywords and pull it up if it matches. So these are kind of our hidden tokens that are in the track. You know, an end user is not going to be sitting there reading through your list of keywords.
All right, so I guess the advice is be reasonable. If you put 100 in there, you're doing something wrong. If you put 7, you're probably in the ballpark. Is that a fair statement?
I would try to get a minimum of 10 keywords in there. I mean, why limit yourself? You're trying to help, move your music. But it depends on the library. They may have limits to how many keywords they can accept. So, you need to check, ask that question. But yeah, don't limit yourself.
I see a question that I'm not going to have us answering today because I'm going to cover it in next week's show, which I should mention now. I've got Paul Croteau, who's a longtime Taxi member, who is obsessed with reading and watching everything he can about AI as it relates to our corner of the music industry. So I've asked him to join me for next week's show to see what he's learned. And he's not a doom and gloom, the sky is falling kind of person. But
well, I'll just say two things about AI. Our policy is that we don't allow any AI created music or lyrics or human voice of singing, because that's a thing now. I would just say, to be on the safe side, don't use this until you know that things have calmed down and we have some legal workarounds, whether this stuff is acceptable or not. But I'm pro human composer. I like that creative aspect of it. I don't want machines to do this for me. What's the I was going to say a bad word. What's the point?
Yeah. Steve was in our meeting with the libraries that we do once a quarter or more often if necessary, and I think we had 12 or 15 different CEOs in that meeting, and we were talking about AI, and the question I had for them is, would you companies like us to start including language in the listings that says you don't accept music that has used AI in any way, shape, or form? And we still haven't come up with the definitive statement, and we're not going to put 1,000-word legal statement in every listing and customize it for each company. So trying to find, one size that fits all has been a difficult endeavor. But one of the questions that we have brought up in internal discussions here at Taxi is, what about using AI to create a harmony part? So there's certain things that seem like they don't break any copyright laws or wouldn't invalidate your submission. Okay, so you're using a plugin that uses AI to add a third and a fifth and a harmony stack. Seems harmless enough. The problem is it's a slippery slope. And once you crack that door open to, a Taxi member or any musician, not just Taxi members, that says, well, you can use it on harmony. So I could probably use it on the lead vocal as well, because that's a vocal too. Or can I use AI to write this lyric? So it gave me the basic idea, but then I modified 25% of it. So these are really, really, really hard questions. You used the right phrase. It's just too early to know. So what we're trying to do as a company right now is act as a bit of a funnel, I guess, and try and collect people who are deep thinkers on AI that aren't overly complex in their thoughts, that understand how AI relates to our people and our corner of the music industry versus, maybe the record side, which we also do. But so, yeah, at the Road Rally, just letting you know that I plan on doing something that I don't think I've ever done before, which is Friday morning, rather than having a keynote speaker. I'm having a keynote panel, and we're doing 2 straight hours with a couple of library owners, a music attorney, Paul Croteau. Some of the people I think are that will have really valuable insight for all of us. And I'm not going to have any classes taking place anywhere else in the building because I want everybody in the ballroom for those 2 hours so that they're not walking up to any of us who are in the ballroom later on in the day going, so can you give me what was the AI in a nutshell? It's not going to be possible to nutshell that. So just know that you're going to get great exposure on this really, really important topic from people that believe that it should be used, people that believe that it shouldn't be used, lawyers, brain surgeons, pole dancers, anybody I can get up there that has a really valid opinion and perspective on AI will be included. So don't miss that. That panel will take place Friday, November 8th haven't decided yet if I'm going to start it at 9 or at 10 a.m. Here's a question from Chris DeBrock. Is an advantage to have pickup notes gestures in the first bar of a cue, or just as effective to start out on beat one?
I don't see any issue with having pickup notes.
That's your whole answer?
And I'm standing by it.
Okay, good. All right. And don't let me forget to give a book away in a minute. Yeah, AI has been. Edmund Red says AI has been around for so many years, like Isotope Mastering Assistant, Logic Drummer, now Logic's keyboard player, and Mastering Assistant. All are AI driven. I know. So that's the hard part, Edmund, is if AI is acting as a tool within a tool, seems to be okay. But if AI is your writing partner or the writer, period, that's a different issue. So yeah, trying to determine, that's what we're trying to figure out. But I'll tell you what, I read the other day, a library owner sent me kind of the UK's mandate, their take on AI, which and how they're treating it from a legal copyright standpoint right now versus the American version. And they're pretty different from each other. So that's another big issue, is getting consensus amongst the PROs or copyright offices all around the world. Because if you've got a song that's going to be distributed internationally, whether it's on a record label or in a production music library, different takes on how AI and copyright should be treated in different places. That's tough. We're in for, it's going to be a while. For those of you who think 6 months from now, all music in production music libraries will be obsoleted by AI, I don't think so. I think we've got a very long way to go in figuring it out. My personal guess at this stage of the game is AI incorporated in tools that help you make music will be fine. AI that is actually replacing what the composer's doing will end up not being fine. Just that's my opinion today at this stage of the discussion. No, Logic Pro Drummer is not off limits. That's what I'm saying. That's why we can't come up with a single sentence. But let's talk about this next week when we do show about AI. We've only got 5 minutes or 7 minutes left, so I want to take more. Okay, here's a great one from Katrina Seifert. What qualities make a composer a go-to composer for your library? I think that is a really good question.
Yeah, it's not enough to be able to write great music and do great production. You have to be easy to work with. You have to follow directions. I've had some people that just provide great music, and oh my God, they can't follow directions to save their lives. You know what? And I'm afraid I would rather not work with them. I'm sad to say that.
Yeah, and you're still not jaded because you're relatively new, and you've already come to that conclusion. You're supposed to agree with me or something. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, I hear you. Yeah, I was trying to think of my next joke.
All right.
My next pun.
Hang on, I just saw a really good one. This is from Michael Bruce Miller. Another great question. How would you describe the difference between production music versus score? There's nobody better to ask than the guy who you're looking at on the left side of your screen, guys.
That's so simple. Production music is written in a bubble. You have no idea when and how it will be used and what kind of scene it will be up against. In score, you're writing to picture, and you're writing to follow the action on the screen or to invoke certain emotions. You know information about the scene, so you can write accordingly. In production music, we don't know. That's why we say stick to a singular emotion, and if the editor needs to switch to a different emotion, he's going to find a different track.
I've had several successful taxi members over the year tell me when they start a cue, they try and imagine the scene that it would work for and make it stick on that same motion throughout. But they take it a step further for libraries is, okay, what other types of scenes could this also be used for? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a library owner, I'm not, but libraries, I think, want to find music that has the greatest potential for being licensed by end users. Therefore, it doesn't just work narrowly for one thing, it could work for several things. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, of course you want to try to do your best to get in many, many things. But really, I mean, we're just talking about an emotion that it conveys and that it works with. Because, if you have music that's playing behind a happy dog, it'll probably work behind a happy cat. Two different kinds of shows, but same kind of feeling.
That's right. Watch a couple episodes of Too Cute, which uses a ton of music. They might set a record for number of cues in an episode. It's the one with the puppies all tumbling around with each other, and then kittens tumbling around with each other, and
exactly.
Yeah, and then they have the episode turtles on speed, because if you leave a turtle to its own devices, they're just so slow. The show's not that interesting. So here you go. Have a little crystal there, Tommy the turtle. Anyway, here's one from Firestarter. How do you get noticed by library owner after the initial signing? What keeps a composer at the top of your radar? That's a good question.
It's like you getting performance reviews. How did you do the last time you gave me music? Did you follow directions? Were you easy to work with? Did I have to go back to you and make a lot of corrections? Look, any library that you work with, there's a learning curve on how things work. The best way to deal with it is to learn their system. And I hope you're working with a lot of different libraries. But don't just assume that once you work for library A and then you go to library B and then you go back to library A that you're still submitting stuff that's following library B's format. Go back and review the instructions and make sure that you're doing it right. Pay attention. It's not that difficult, but the more you don't take it seriously, then the library's not going to take you seriously.
Yeah, a lot of people think all libraries are one size fit all, and they will also make the mistake of falling in love with the first library that signs them and thinking they get me, they love me, and I'm going to give them all my stuff because they get me and they love me. And you find out that they have a certain type of clientele, like Steve's library might do a lot of reality TV shows, but doesn't do daytime soap operas or something like that. So songs that might work for a soap shouldn't be in his catalog because his customers don't need it. Maybe 3 years from now, he will develop that part and need to build it up. But really important to get to know who your library's end clients are, at least the types of shows that they get placements in, before you commit to putting more eggs in that basket. And for God's sake, Don't commit the mortal sin of putting all your eggs in one basket. You are much better off with 10 pieces of music in 10 libraries than 100 in one. Way better off, because when one...
Yeah, I agree. And as much as I'd love to have some of these composers only write for me, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So you have your music in a lot of different libraries.
Let's give a book away. Let me lower my air conditioner. We're at that time of year in Los Angeles that when the sun hits the blinds, it gets really toasty really fast here. Eco? No, I don't want eco. Stop. Wow. I've got a Nest thermostat that has AI'd its mind into, I'm going to ignore everything Michael wants me to do. Okay, we're giving away a copy of an incredibly excellent book. Honestly, if you don't win it today and you don't have it, go buy it. How much is the book? $29?
Yeah. It's often on sale on Amazon.
Honestly, if this book were $100, it would be a bargain. And I'm not saying this because I like Steve and he's a good guy. I'm saying it because the book is that incredibly... you have to have it. If you want to be doing music for TV, you have to have this book.
Yeah, and come out to the rally, and I'll be there with my books, and buy a book from me, and I'll make more money, and then I'll sign it for you too.
There you go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Type the letter S for Steve. Basically, if you live in the United States or Canada, if you live in like Norway, it's going to cost us more to send you the book than the book costs. So I hate to exclude you, but please, North America, type the letter S, and then Liz will run her finger up and down the list. We will pick a winner, and we will get the book out to you soon. It's nice. I'm seeing some names that I normally don't see. I'm really glad you guys showed up for the show. By the way, while you're doing that, because I'm seeing these new names, hit the subscribe button and hit the little alert bell so you know when we're going live. We've been doing this show for, believe it or not, 13 years now. And we have such a tremendous library of information in these episodes, so I'm glad for you newbies that you're here. All right, Dean Turner's got one signed by Steve at the rally. How you doing, Dean? I was thinking about you the other day, Dean. I can't remember. Oh, I know. I was looking for a rally promo shot or something for the newsletter, and I saw a picture of you and made me think, wonder how Dean's doing. So, hi. Yep, 13 years. I don't know that I called it TAXITV in the beginning, and maybe I didn't do my cheesy opening, but it was basically like an hour of me on camera talking about the music industry. The rally we are going to do our 28th road rally. Fran Lucci's the winner. Yay. I'm happy about that. Doug Minnick and I, our vice president that was with Taxi for like 10 years and we're still friends, he and I were both big fans of Fran Lucci's music back in the day, and I haven't seen her or her name in many, many years. I saw her last week in the chat. So, Fran, welcome back, and you are going to love that book. Send your information to Liz at taxi.com, Liz at taxi.com, and she will get the book out to you. You'll get it in a few days. Steve, thank you. Thanks for doing this. And just this is such important information for people to understand that it's about so much more than just the music. And I don't mean to minimize the value of the music by saying just the music, but there was a time when you could write 3 great songs, get signed by, if you looked good and were good on stage and had 3 good songs, you could get a record deal. To be in the production music industry, it doesn't matter if you're young, if you're old, if you're fat, if you're skinny, if you're short, if you're tall, if you're bald, if you have tons of hair. None of that matters. Only 2 things matter.
Thank goodness.
No, but it doesn't, because you're anonymous. But I know production people who make production music that are making six-figure incomes, some that are making multiple six-figure incomes, and nobody cares what they look like, and they work pretty normal hours, like a 40, 50-hour week. And it's like better than buying stocks or bonds, because it becomes cumulative over time. And you could stop at the age of 65, not that anybody will, but and the money keeps rolling in. So you do want to get as many pieces out there in as many libraries as possible, get as many placements as possible. And it's all doable, but you have to know the business side. And none of it is hard. It's just, it takes time and it takes common sense. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. And your two biggest takeaways from this, kids, is follow directions and spend time on keywords. Okay? Thank you.
That's great advice. You know what? That was worth hanging out for 90 minutes with, is just to learn that. And Marianne Laird is asking, are you going to be at the Road Rally this year? Oh, no, she's asking Katrina Seifert. She says, I don't care about Steve. I only care about Katrina. She didn't say
well,
that.
In case anybody wanted to know, yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure that we'll have you do a class or a panel or something, and you'll have your book booth again. So I look forward to it. Thank you for making the time to do this. I know now that you're a library owner, how busy you must be, and I really appreciate it.
You have no idea. I asked a couple of library owners, Chuck Henry and a couple of guys, about doing this, and they said, don't do it. You know what? It's like having a baby every quarter. You start off, you're excited about it, you see the potential. By the end, you're screaming, don't come near me again.
Right.
And then a couple weeks later, you're fine. You're starting over.
Yeah, the baby needs a little sister. That's the way I get it. Every month I do the newsletter. It totally takes over one weekend a month for me. And every weekend, I think, nobody's reading the thing. A couple hundred people read it out of thousands of members. Screw it. I'm going to quit doing the newsletter. But for the couple hundred that do read it, I feel really good about them getting information that moves them ahead. And the people that consistently do read it and consistently go to the Road Rally and consistently watch TAXITV end up being a Steve Barden level composer, a Matt Vanderbo level composer, because they paid attention in class and they did the work. It's an easy formula. You just can't be lazy and expect a miracle. So there it is. And Liz just put the GoFundMe thing for Marion in the chat one more time. I will see you guys next week. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the little alert bell. Give us a thumbs up. It makes YouTube search engine like us better. And until next week, kids, have a great one. There's the right button. There we go. We should have you and Keith LeBrant do a solo contest at the Road Rally to the TAXITV theme song.
Let me get my...
Okay, I'll bring it back up.
I can't hear it, so I don't know what I'm jamming to. But I know it's an A. All right.